Hi guys, Meet here, and today I want to talk about Bungie and specifically how it's possible that Bungie could get back in bed with Microsoft, which I think would be really interesting. So, looking back, Bungie partnered with Microsoft or were owned by Microsoft way back when, and they created Halo, which was an incredible game for the time. It was one of the most influential console shooters. Halo 2, some would argue, was even bigger. It brought the first real online multiplayer. It was a revelation at the time. I spent many hours with my friends playing that game. It was incredible. And then they refined it with Halo 3, possibly plateaued at that point. Halo Reach, Halo 4 went downhill somewhat, and then after Halo Reach, they parted ways, which was big news at the time. They wanted independence. Microsoft were pushing them in avenues that they didn't want to go down, so they decided to get creative freedom and move away. So at this point, you start to hear news that Bungie are working on a game called Destiny, and the trailers are released, and it's advertised at E3, and it looks incredible. And it's a first-person shooter, an open-world first-person shooter, a bit of an MMORPG, which sounds amazing. If something that plays like Halo but has RPG elements, it'd be fantastic. Everyone gets on board, and most of all, it's going to be multi-platform. In fact, it's not just going to be multi-platform, it's going to have exclusive content for the PlayStation, which is a huge blow for the Xbox and a bit of a kick in the teeth. But obviously, Bungie are going to sell a hell of a lot more games doing so, which is quite an interesting choice given the past history with Microsoft and the Xbox. So Bungie get a partnership with Activision Blizzard to sell the game, to publish the game, and it's released in 2014. It gets mediocre reviews. I think it's fair to say that the game didn't quite match people's expectations. It was extremely grindy, but it still sold really well, and the actual mechanics of the game were fantastic. Felt good to play, but it was just extremely repetitive. So Bungie continue to refine the game. They improve it, but they don't quite nail people's first expectations. The problem is that Bungie made a lot of promises about the content of Destiny and how it was going to play out, and it was vastly different to the end product that people were receiving. That's not to say that the end product was bad. There was a beta which was very good, but when people got the final game, it just was a little bit hollow, and it was very grindy. And Bungie eventually improved it with patches, but it was really quite different to what people were expecting, and that's why some of the reviews were quite scathing. It was very mediocre reviews. So fast forward 3 years, and Bungie are looking to release Destiny 2. Everyone anticipates that they've learnt from the mistakes of the first game, and they're going to release a polished product which improves upon everything. And in some respects they did. It's a vastly improved games, but within 2 weeks or 3 weeks of people having played the game, monotony had set in. There were the same familiar problems. It was definitely an improvement on the first game, but it still had the same innate problems, so people were turned off very quickly. There were some poor design choices and some poor marketing for the game, and ultimately the public turned on it. It got some very bad press, and there was a lot of negativity surrounding it, and a lot of people stopped playing it. So at this point, Bungie and Activision are firefighting to try and save the game, because they have a long-term plan. They want expansions for the game. They want to continue releasing content where they can generate revenue from it. But it's almost too little too late. They released some really good content, but by this point the rot had set in and people were really turned off Destiny, and that sort of brings us up to where we are today. So everyone assumed that Destiny was going to be a trilogy of games where Activision and Bungie were in a long-term partnership to realise this trilogy. It's been talked about in the past, but in the last week it's been announced that Activision and Bungie have decided to go their separate ways, which is really interesting. Bungie's stance is that they want more creative freedom so they can take the game where they want without the influence of a publisher, and apparently Activision want to work on their own IPs. Make of that what you will. To me, it sounds like a relationship that's gone very sour, with one team pulling in one direction and one team pulling in the other. So where does this leave the game now? So everyone is expecting Destiny 3, so there's a few options of what could happen. The first one is that Bungie could create the game in their own image. They could attempt to meet the expectations that they claimed that the game was going to deliver on way back when in the original E3 when Destiny 1 was released. And they could publish their own game, which is a big company as Bungie. They could feasibly do that. Another option, which I think is an interesting option, is that they could partner with Microsoft again. Now that might sound pretty outrageous, but Microsoft now are a very different company to the one they were then. I think Microsoft are a lot more receptive, and they've made a few mistakes in the past. I think you can read about stuff where they've tried to push games companies, similar to what it sounds like Activision have been done, down a path that not all game creators want to go, and they've tried to influence where and how the games are created, which has led to, you could say, inferior products. But the Microsoft of today, that they're trying to partner with game companies, and they seem a lot more receptive to delivering what the fans want, which I think is essentially what Bungie want currently. So in a roundabout way, they both pull in the same direction. So is it that outlandish that they could work together? Microsoft are on a buying spree at the minute where they're picking up top developers to increase the amount of AAA titles that they put out to try and catch up with Sony, where the one area that they've been lacking in. So partnering with Bungie would be just that. It would fulfill that role. However, one of the big things is that would Bungie want to lose all the revenue stream from the PS4 and potentially the Nintendo Switch if that ever was to happen? Well, crazier things have happened. Microsoft bought Minecraft publisher Mojang, and Minecraft is published on all platforms. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that would be to happen. So I think it's an interesting time. If Bungie do decide to self-publish, that means that they live or die by the next product, because they have no more excuses. They can't say that the product was held back because of some publishers' demands. So Bungie really have no more excuses now. If they self-publish, they have to deliver on the product that they are promising on. They've got big competition coming up from Anthem, which looks, in my eyes, a very similar game. And people are really starting to show fatigue with the Destiny brand. There's been a lot of turn-off recently, so they really have to do some serious work and really knock it out of the ballpark with the next product. So it's an interesting time ahead. I would love to see Microsoft throw a butt ton of money at Bungie and just say, go wild and make us the best vision that you can of this game. I think if Bungie and Microsoft had have partnered originally, and it would have been a title exclusive for the Xbox, essentially Halo MMORPG, then that's one of my fantasies, and that was never to happen. But this could be the closest step we'd get. But yeah, we'll see. It's an interesting time. What's more likely to happen is that Destiny 3 will be released. It'll improve on a number of points that Destiny 2 had, but ultimately it will be a very similar game, and it doesn't meet the fans' expectations, and possibly the brand will fade into obscurity and Bungie will move on to something different. But I do hope that they deliver on what they originally set out to achieve, because when they first described the game, it sounded incredible, and eventually something will be made that meets those, and who knows, Bungie, if anyone, are a company that can do it. So those are my thoughts, guys. If you liked the video, be sure to push the like button below. If not, you feel free to dislike it and leave your comments below. I'm always open to criticism and ways that I can improve the channel. Thank you for listening, and catch you soon.